Welcome back to another episode of the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner and Mudgear Hannibal Race Pro, Evan Paris. I had a guest with me on the line. Before we get to him, though, a quick word from this episode's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Obstacle Running Adventures. That's right, another podcast is sponsoring our own podcast. So head over to Obstacle Running Adventures if you want some more coverage, especially if you're in the Northeast. Mike Stefano and Caitlin Ritter, or Caitlin Stefano, I guess now, both live in the Northeast in Massachusetts area, so they cover a lot of those local events up there. I've got one of the most regularly occurring podcasts. They're producing like episodes every week for I don't know how many years now, 5 years. It's been a hot minute, and you can check them out if you want more content. I know we've dropped the number of episodes we produce just to about 2 per month, and then I also occasionally stray into random topics, just like this episode. So if you want pure OCR content, plus a little bit of the local events in the Northeast, you can head over and listen to Obstacle Running Adventures. All right, let's bring on our guests. I have Tommy Crisostomo. I'm going to mess up your name. Crisostomo, is that right?
Yep, it is correct.
Yeah. On the line, he is a martial artist who also occasionally will dip his toe in the obstacle course racing world in the form of City Challenge race. So a little bit about his background, but I'm going to let him explain it probably in more depth because there's a lot there as far as the martial arts side. Trained in Aikido, Judo, and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. And then basically, I'd say your strongest and most active part of martial arts is the Filipino martial arts. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So I do a blend of, so currently what I practice is Kali Silat. So it's a blend of Kali Filipino martial arts, as well as Indonesian martial arts.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're going to be talking mostly about Kali and Silat since we haven't really explored that topic. And then we're also going to talk about City Challenge race. And then we're also going to talk about his small training group, which I think it can apply also to those who are looking at doing like a small obstacle course racing training group. Again, this is primarily an obstacle course racing focused podcast, but we bring in people from other sports or other complex skills such as martial arts to steal their lessons learned and then apply them to obstacle course racing. And since this is my podcast and I am currently on a deep dive into martial arts, you get a lot of martial arts content mixed into your obstacle course racing content. So I'm trying to spread it out, doing different styles and kind of stealing some of their lessons learned from across the larger martial arts community. All right, so let's back up a little bit. Mm-hmm. Before we get into City Challenge, talk to me a little bit about your background in martial arts and kind of give me like the 2 or 3 minute version of your journey through martial arts and how you ended up where you are today.
Yes, absolutely. So in my journey of martial arts, definitely UFC and mixed martial arts was a big influence as far as me dabbling into judo and jiu-jitsu, more so Japanese jiu-jitsu as opposed to Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Something that really intrigued me about Japanese jiu-jitsu is that it incorporated a lot more striking, a lot more joint locks, and a lot more of a stand-up game as opposed to just going straight to the ground. Mm. But even before then, a buddy of mine, he practiced Aikido years ago. So being a high schooler, I was really interested in learning about Aikido, and it was just something that was like off the beaten path as opposed to Taekwondo and karate and all the other mainstream commercialized, in my opinion, commercialized martial arts. So I got into Aikido first. I would actually go from where I lived in Jersey to New York City to train with New York Aikikai for about a month or two. But I will tell you, with all the Japanese martial arts I've trained, a lot of it was just kind of dabbling, getting into it, mostly because of time, resources, and, at that phase in life, just going through a lot of transitions from, being a high schooler to someone in college, didn't really have a lot of cash flow. So I had to decide either to pay my tuition or practice martial arts. So, the first martial art I really practiced was Aikido. Then from there, when I was in college, and that was when I was in high school, but in college, that's when I practiced judo for a couple months. But then after college, that's when I practiced Japanese jiu-jitsu. I spent about half a year in Yoshitsune Kaijitsu as well as Taizenru Taiho Jitsu, which with the Yoshitsune, that's more traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. And with the Taizenru Taiho Jitsu, they actually incorporated a lot of the police takedowns, a lot of joint locks, and how to apprehend a a perpetrator,
Hmm.
pretty much. But what was amazing to me about that experience was that with the Taizenryu Taiho Jitsu, not only did we learn how to break down the body as far as the joint locks, takedowns, and apprehending individuals, but then also we would actually practice shiatsu, how to actually heal the body at the end of the class. So we would spend the last 10, 20 minutes of the class after we've been throwing each other around, beating each other up. Then we would actually start engaging the meridian lines on people's backs and actually try to engage, not try, but actually engage the healing process so that we could recover faster. So that was an amazing experience. But
That's
then,
that's pretty cool because I know like a lot of people who train bladed arts don't ever
mhm,
talk about like what happens when you actually get cut, right? Because there's this the whole second part of it where it's like, all right, well now I'm bleeding everywhere, even if I quote unquote won the knife fight, right? Like, how do
yeah,
I deal with this? Or even just like common sense. Hey, I'm training, and you know, so an accident happens and someone actually gets cut, which should not happen because you use training blades, or you should be using training blades. But yeah, I think that I like that how it kind of a little more complete, full circle. Before we keep going with your
mhm,
background, for our listeners, Aikido, I would say made famous in American pop culture eyes by Steven Seagal.
mhm.
I know Aikido gets a lot of hate from people. Is that warranted, or do you still like it even though you've been practicing all these other styles, or are there good components that we can take away from that?
Absolutely. In my opinion, with many martial arts, there's a lot of great principles and components that we could take and use. And I will tell you this, like when I practiced judo, one of the things that my instructor or sensei at the time pointed out was that my rolls were more like Aikido rolls, because how I'd roll, I would quickly recover and get back up.
Hmm.
Whereas with a judo, they're looking for you to actually fall and break your fall and kind of take it to the ground. And so I will say this, yeah, there is definitely a lot of bad rep as far as Aikido is concerned, but Aikido, for its purposes and what it's intended for, is a very beautiful martial art, both in the philosophical sense, but also in the practical sense. Because with Aikido, even though it was made to, from Mo Sensei, deal with a lot of the laws that were placed on Japan at that time in order to continue the traditions. But when you really look at it as from a martial application, definitely more of a bladed or weapon-based martial art.
Hmm.
The big motions to the throws to the joint locks and breaks. Definitely, you're dealing with an armored opponent that's in full battle gear, and so you can't really punch someone if they're wearing body armor, but you could break their elbows. You could actually put them in an arm bar because those are the soft areas that you could attack. So with Aikido, very much a lot of practical usages if you know what to look for and how to apply it.
Gotcha. Interesting. All right, continue on with some of your deep dive into some of the other Filipino martial arts and Pakiti Terja, Indonesian martial arts, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So from that, you know, movies like Jason Bourne, the Bourne Identity series, to even The Hunted with Tommy Lee Jones and Benicio del Toro, it really opened up to Filipino martial arts, and it was something that as someone who was born in America, I've always wanted to be to reconnect with my Filipino roots. And so I saw Kali as an opportunity to be able to get in touch with my culture, or at least with my mother's culture. So, when I was in college, I picked up a couple of books. One was on Calis Illustrissimo, and then another book on Cabal Serrata Eskrima, which with those are two different systems of Kali, and both have different emphases. One is more bladed, the other one is more impact weapon oriented. And when you look into history of that, you can see where those systems came from. With the founder of Calis Illustrissimo, dude was just basically a badass. He actually had to kill people. That was his line of duty. That was his job. But whereas with Angel Caballas, he worked on the docks, so he had to work with a shorter weapon in order to deal with thieves and criminals that are trying to break into the docks and steal products. So he couldn't really carry around a sword, but he had a shorter stick, and so he learned how to fight with that and use those skills. But yeah, it was in as far as my journey in July of 2019. That's when I came across Dos Paris as well in Jersey City, as well as Kunta Cruzada Kali, which I spent 3 months with Rich Acosta, as well as Wilton Valerio and Alex Guerrero. That's where I really got into martial arts. Practicing with the Kunta Cruzada Kali crew, that's when, Kali just became ingrained in me. So in those 3 months, I would practice 3, 4 times a week. Anytime I had time, I would just go right into New York City and train with those guys. Then during my off time, or even when I'm exercising at the gym, I would actually just do Kali, do my footwork. I didn't really want to bring my sticks out in the middle of the gym, but I would go to the park and I would just practice my footwork and my stick work just to get that down, and it became a part of me. Then when I moved to Maryland, I came across Apollo and Bobby Ladra. I spent more time training with Bobby than Apollo, but I was working with them, training with them in the Bikini Tertia Tri-V method of teaching. And so for about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half, almost 2, I trained with Bobby. Then I worked with Mike Zechek of Sina Tertia Wali, which Sina Tertia Wali. So I'm going to basically kind of list all the systems, a lot of cross training along the way. But with Sina Tertia Wali, it is a system that was founded on Bikini Tertia, as well as Dosa Paris, and then Lankan Pot Silat. Because years ago, Eddie Jaffrey, he was the one that brought Penjak Silat into America and made it more well-known in the New York City area. Fun fact about Eddie Jaffrey, he was the kind of guy that after a seminar, he would talk to his students and, teach the guys how to deal with knives and fight with a knife. Then he'll go, hey, let's go into Central Park. Now, at that time, back in the 70s, New York City was a real bad, area. But he'll go into Central Park, have dollar bills hanging out of his pocket and try to, basically get people to mug him so he could use his martial arts.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Questionable logic, but yeah, wanting to pressure test the system, I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah, but with Sina Tertia Wali, those were the founding systems. And then last year, I became certified as a guru in Sina Tertia Wali. But nowadays, I'm under the banner of Combat Kali Silat, which Tony McGregor, he is a student of Greg Allen, the founder of Sina Tertia Wali. But with Tony, he trained in 2 different systems of Kali. One is Bikini Tertia Kali, as well as Dikiti Sarada, Dikiti Tertia Sarada, which both are taught by the same family, the Tortile family, but they have different emphases and different perspectives on the techniques. That's his Kali. But as far as his Silat, with Tony McGregor, he also teaches Harimau, Chimandi, Sarak, as well. I always mispronounce it, but Sarak, and then also Lankan Pot Silat. So quite a mixture of Kali and Silat that is being taught.
Gotcha. Now, for our listeners, a lot of them are not martial artists, so explain what Kali is and then explain what Silat is real quick.
Okay,
The wave top version. Yeah.
Absolutely. So a good way to look at it is that with Kali, we're very much blade oriented. We don't like to we don't ever want to let go of our blades. Whereas with Silat is the other side of the coin, where with Silat, we could actually do a lot more with our empty hand. Of course, we're blade oriented in Silat, but we have no problems just fighting empty hand. Whereas with Kali, they like to keep their blades in their hands at all times.
Gotcha. Now, listening to your bio and then also reading your bio, you've bounced around through a lot of different systems before kind of, or at least apparently settling for at least for a little bit. Why jump around versus sticking with one specific style? Like a lot of people go to a martial arts school, whatever's closest to their house, they'll do that one style, and that's the path they're on, whether they chose that path or whether it's just physically the closest location to them. Why did you bounce around? And we see that some of that we see with obstacle course racing too, where people find the first brand they show up to is Spartan, and they're like, I will not do any of the races besides Spartan now because that's what the first race I went to was.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's my mindset, and then this kind of leads into obstacle course racing. So for me, when it comes to martial arts, so much information is available. So as much as you have schools and you have your systems, and then you might even have people who are more traditionalists as far as like having the family system and very secretive about what they teach and who they teach and whom they teach. But one thing I've learned is that when it comes to martial arts, there's only so many ways you can manipulate the body. There's only so many ways you could punch, you can kick, and basically fight off an aggressor. So with these perspectives, when I train with cross train with a lot of other martial artists, from Wing Chun folks to Aikido to Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai guys, I'm really looking for what are the fundamentals? What are something key components I could take from each of these different things and make it my own? Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to be able to do the moves that they do. I'm not going to be able to do all the techniques that they do. But if I can understand how to get there, then I could, kind of reverse engineer those techniques, and then I can make my own. And then from there, take the Lego blocks and build a whole new structure with what I learned. And that kind of applies to obstacle course racing, because a lot of times when you look at a problem, you're like, shoot, how the hell am I going to, I see monkey bars, but now I see the ropes I got to grab onto. There are metal bars that are either hang down or vertically or horizontally, and I got to be able to figure out how to cross from one side to the other. How do I do that? Or when you have a 9-foot wall versus a 4-foot wall, sure, the basic idea is get over the wall. But now you got to think of what are some key components. So what are some fundamentals you got to do? For some, you might be able to just kind of grab onto the top of the wall, pull yourself up like a pull-up, then climb over. For some, you got to, kick off the wall. So there's just so many things that, for me, martial arts and obstacle course racing really kind of blends together. Because again, okay, I'm not going to do Sinawali. I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do, triangle footwork on while I'm carrying sandbags. But it's the idea of discipline, looking at the fundamentals, looking at your strengths, your core strength, your ability to do things, and how you could problem solve as you're going through the obstacle course.
Yeah, no, I love it. It definitely complex problem solving and, taking into account variables, right? Yeah, I know when I do jujitsu, there are some guys who are like all attribute based, grapplers or rollers, where they're like, oh, I'll just muscle my way through everything. And it's like, well, yeah, that works if you're stronger than your opponent, but sometimes you're not stronger than your opponent. And then eventually you're going to get tired. And then if you don't have good fundamentals, it's not going to work. And the same thing with my specialty is ultra endurance obstacle course racing. So I can muscle my way over a wall, essentially do a muscle up on the top of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't do a muscle up to the top of the wall after 12 hours of running in the middle of a, ultra endurance race. Like my body gives out, right? So if I don't have the good fundamentals to be able to, kick off the sideboard or whatever, to the good technique, it's just not going to work. So, yeah. And then also, if you're doing a short race, you may want to conserve some of that muscle strength, some of that energy for the rigs later on. So,
yeah, absolutely.
It's
there's a lot of times where folks, like you said, they would actually muscle through, and because they're so used to just doing attributes, they're physical athletes as far as strength is concerned. But by the time they get to the end of the course, that's when you start having more like American Ninja Warrior type obstacle courses, where you really got to climb up on metal rigs. You got to use your basically, rock climbing techniques. And because they're so worn out from everything else that they did, they'll just, settle for doing the 30 burpees and move on. And so that's the thing where with martial arts, that's where the discipline comes in. Knowing how to pace yourself, knowing how to use, like you said, the proper fundamentals, like kicking off the sideboard so you can climb up on a wall, so you're not just muscling up all the time. And also, like, that's where the training comes in. Because I'll be honest, like when it comes to obstacle course racing, there are a lot of times where and I'm not saying for our listeners to not train, we should be training all the time. But there are times where I don't have the time to train. From all the martial arts training I do, from attending seminars to training with other folks to teaching, I don't have a whole lot of personal time to just exercise and really focus on, um, doing rock climbing or doing the conditioning so I can get ready for an obstacle course race. But because of the discipline I have in martial arts, it helped me to, to discipline myself as far as the running portion is concerned, or when it comes to climbing over obstacle courses or even carrying heavy weights, from flipping tires to carrying cinder blocks and sandbags, is thinking about, okay, what is my technique? How am I applying my core? How am I using my legs? How am I using my proper footwork so that when I'm running, I'm not going to end up with shin splints or hurting my knees just because I'm running heel to toe, as opposed to just running with the midfoot of my, mid part of my foot. So all kinds of really great techniques that come from martial arts, it applies to obstacle course racing.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your training group. How did it start? Are there other Kali schools in the area? But you just created your own little group, or was there no Kali schools in the area, et cetera, stuff like that?
Oh, okay. So, so let me kind of backtrack a little bit
Okay.
as far as, the cross training and come across different groups. And then I'll lead that into the group that I'm training now. So it just kind of happened that way. When I first started Dos Paris, it was kind of a bad experience, for on my part, because when I trained with those guys for about 2 sessions, it was only until the second session, after approximately 6 hours of training, I was told that everything I was doing was all wrong and finally was being corrected. I was like, oh man, this is not good teaching. But it just kind of happened that way, where going from Dos Paris to Kunta Cruzada Cali, then moving to Maryland, I had to find a group to train with in Maryland because I wanted to carry on my training. And so always wanted to be open-minded to, for one, to look at the fundamentals, to look at the principles that are being taught and make it my own. But then also, too, if there's another way that people could problem solve, why not learn from them? Why not train? Why not be open-minded and say, hey, here's a problem. How do you solve that problem? Um, and so even with the gatherings that we have in Maryland, because there's actually, surprisingly enough, there is a huge saturation of Filipino martial arts schools in the Maryland, DC, and Virginia area. So we actually have close to 3 gatherings a year where a good number of schools, I'm talking about anywhere from 5 to 10 schools, join together, and in a family style, we all just share our techniques, share what we teach with each other, so that we could all, learn together and just appreciate and love the martial art that we, are most passionate about. And there are times where I've actually had a jiu-jitsu guy just come down and share jiu-jitsu in our gatherings, and then we will apply with knives. So if you got someone in your guard, how to be able to deploy your blade so that we could neutralize the threat. So we've done things like that. So reason why I've cross-trained so much is because why not? Why limit myself to one system? I know some folks, and there's nothing wrong with folks that stay in one system and train in that one system their entire martial arts life. That's perfectly fine, and they should. But for those who love to cross train and learn and see different things, they can go down that path as well, because there's so many. I'm trying to remember how Yamamoto Munenori put it, but basically there's so many paths, but there's only one way. Mm-hmm. And so why not look at different paths, look at many different ways of learning to figure out your way. So when it comes to go back to your question now about my training group, it kind of came from a lot of misunderstandings, but we're kind of going forward. So when I was certified as a guru in Senior Tertiary Wali, I wanted to stick to the fundamentals and really teach those things. But there were a couple of disagreements that I had with the head instructor, and so basically I was kicked out of the system. But with the guys that I trained with, like I kept it honest with them and explained to them, everything that was happening with the head instructor. Um, but they said, "Hey, Tom, we want to train with you. We want to learn the fundamentals. We want to make sure we get things right." And I offered them the option. I say, "Hey, listen, I know that, I want to let you guys know what the story is between the head instructor and myself, but I want to encourage you. If you want to train with him, you can. If you want to train with me, you can. Or if you want to train with me for a while and then work with him and do that, I totally encourage you to do that. But either way, if you're going to train with me, of course, I'm going to teach you the fundamentals, teach you the things that I know, but I'm also going to bring you guys out to seminars because I want you guys to learn as much as possible. Because I don't want you to just have one source of information. I want you to have many sources. That way you can really develop yourself and really grow in your martial arts. So
Nice.
with the guys I have five guys that train with me. We meet on Sundays and from time to time, whenever seminars come up, I let them know what's going on. And even if they're not able to come, I'll bring that information back to our group so that way I can share with them. That way it could help them to grow as martial artists.
So if someone was starting, let's say, let's cross this over to obstacle course racing. Let's say someone wants to start a small obstacle course race training group in their, because you train at your house, is that correct? Or
Yeah, so I got plans to actually build an obstacle course race in my backyard so I could actually, actually do some training.
so I'm talking about for martial arts. You train at your house for the martial arts?
Yes. For martial arts, I do have my house set up for training. Yep.
Okay, so let's say someone wants to do, take some of the lessons you've learned from setting up a small training group for martial arts, but then cross them over and apply them to obstacle course racing. If someone wants to grab some friends or some clients or whatever and start a obstacle course race training group, any tips you would have for someone starting a new group? Like, one, how do you get people interested, etc. Anything you've learned over the couple years you've been training people?
Absolutely. So here's something I've learned even before I became certified, before I was certified as a guru. One thing I learned is this: find people that are passionate about what you're doing. Find people that have the same passion as you in what you're doing. So let's say in the scenario of obstacle course racing, come across as you talk to people and not necessarily proselytize people the way, people of certain religions would, but as you talk in casual conversation and you hear someone say, "Hey, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that." Why not say, "Hey, be a friend," and say, "Hey, you know what? There's an obstacle course race that's coming up. You want to join me? We could train together." And just keep it no pressure. Just keep in mind that a lot of folks are on different paths or journeys in their own fitness journey. So some people might not be able to run. Some people might have knee problems. Some people may have never lifted a weight at all in their lives. And so one thing I learned when it comes to small group training and really trying to, in place of better words, like recruit people, is really just talk to folks, say, "Hey, I've seen that you have some interest in here. How about you come train with me? If you got an obstacle course in your backyard that where you train, say, "Hey, you want to come over to my house? Let's do a little bit of rock climbing. Let's go out for a jog. Let's go for a quick run." And through that, just build relationships. I find it that for me, all right, what works the most for me as far as building my student base is really building relationships with people. One of my the guys I train with or trains under me, he pointed out that when he went to a seminar, even though he was invited by the seminar host didn't even know his name, but yet I knew him by name, and that meant a lot to him. That I actually paid attention to learn his name, to talk to him, actually see him as a person and not just as a student.
Mm-hmm.
And so same thing with obstacle course racing, because even with obstacle course racing, that's a bond that you develop with someone else where you're both struggling through the same thing, whether it be running that 5K or climbing walls, hopping over cop cars, flipping tires, doing jump rope with battle rope. All those things is a bonding experience. So it really, the focus, in my opinion, is building those relationships with your people. So, people, look, like from Spartan to Tough Mudder, you have a lot of companies that do, team building. The reason why is because they realize, hey, if the team can work together to solve a problem together, then you build bonds that you normally don't build with other people. And so for me, it goes back to people and relationships.
And that's a good point. I mentioned some of the, I would call, I guess, tribalism that we have within obstacle course racing of like, I only do this brand. And I think you see that even, especially with Tough Mudder and Spartan specifically, because people, it's not even the obstacles, it's the relationships and the community they are now friends with at those events, right? So like the Tough Mudder community is very tight, and like the ones who come to a lot of events are a fairly small group. So like everyone kind of knows each other, and some of them refuse to race outside Tough Mudder, even though there are courses with much better obstacles at a much lower price that are more convenient to get to. They're like, no, I only do Tough Mudder. And you're like, well, maybe try something else a little bit too. And they're like, no, only Tough Mudder. You're like, all right, fine. But yeah, no, I think you hit it pretty good there with the importance of relationships within a group. And I'll say from some of my training with martial arts, the people who have the passion to stick around are the people who end up going the furthest. Mostly because everyone else essentially just eventually gives up, right? Like the people, we have guys come into the training gym all the time that are very athletic and, on a pure physical level would beat some of the people that had been there for a while, but a lot of them lose interest after a couple of weeks or months and then they go on and do something else. So, if those guys came back, the person who's been training longer would most likely beat them because now they have a whole new series of techniques, more repetitions, and they're faster and smoother at it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And even in like kind of touching base with that, I mean, going back to martial arts, one thing I found that kind of drives me is that, you talk about tribalism. The way I see it with all the different groups I train with is that I'm all under one tribe. We're all one big family. There is a Tuhan in Bikini Tertia. His name is Bill McGrath. He wrote a blog. But long story short, the blog is how big is your us? And long story short, when it comes to obstacle course racing or even martial arts or any other passion that we have, how big is your us?
Yeah.
I want to, for me, like something that I do, this is a matter of principle for me, is that with the martial art community, I want to build as big of an us as possible because it's all about networking. It's all about relationships. So if I ever hear that someone's moving to a new area, and they ask, hey, do you have any recommendations on a martial arts school or Kali school or Silat or whatnot? I say, hey, I know someone over there. And I love being in that position because I know that we can't have the largest group, or I can't teach as many people or have as many people come out to my school. But if they live closest to another area, why not go to that other person? Someone once said this, a rising tide raises all ships.
Right.
Doug Marqueta, he's on Forge and Fire. And because of that, Kali is really being talked about more. And so why not, say, hey, here's a Kali school. Here's Doug Marqueta showing his videos and hosting his seminars. But not everyone's going to be able to go and see Doug Marqueta personally, but they can come out to my school or my training group, or they come out to another training group. Or if we're in Chicago, I know people out there. So why not, have that relationship to say, hey, you may not work well with this group, but how about this other group? Same thing with obstacle course racing. Some people might be into Tough Mudder or Spartan or the City Challenge race, which I love doing. Why not say, hey, if you don't like mud, you can do City Challenge race, which I know you and I talked about it. One of these days, I will do Tough Mudder because why not?
Yeah. You nailed it again with the, how big is our us? I was listening to the Wing Chun, Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee focused podcast, Kung Fu Genius, and he was talking about how even someone who does martial arts, even if it's the complete, if someone does Aikido and then someone else does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the two of you have way more in common than because you train in martial arts and you're consistent with it, and consistency, discipline, learning techniques, learning a new skill, advancing in rank, like all these things, and training in martial arts are all these things you have in common that makes you a lot more similar than different. And sometimes you get into these fights within the martial arts community, within the obstacle course racing community. No, this brand's better than this one, and like, oh, I don't like this guy. But even the person you probably disagree with most that runs obstacle course racing, you probably have more in common with that person than a lot of the people that you'll meet on the street or people you work with. So, you can find it's always easy to find differences. But there's a lot of commonalities across obstacle course racing, and if you're in the martial arts space in that area as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're going to start closing out some of the martial arts talk, but before we go, I think a lot of people know specific styles of martial arts based off of movies. So any movie recommendations regarding Kali or Silat, and it can be like, oh, here's a good example of something that's very technically executed, but maybe the plot's not very good. Or it can just be like, hey, this one has a lot of Kali in it, and I love it, even though the action is completely ridiculous. So let's do some movie recommendations for some of our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely the raid would come to mind as far as Sea-Lot. That's when you really see.
So good.
Yeah, it's so good, especially the blades. That's such a great movie. Another great movie to see Sea-Lot is John Wick 3, especially in the final fight scene between the two Sea-Lot fighters versus John Wick.
Yeah.
That's a great scene. As far as Kali is concerned, so the funny thing about Kali is that, and I gotta say, it's probably because of the culture. With the Filipino culture, we've been colonized both by the Spaniards and by America, and then from time to time invaded by Japan. So we can integrate our Kali into a lot of different things. But as far as a pure Kali movie, there is The Hunted, where you definitely see a lot of Filipino martial arts. In fact, the Atienza SIOC guys, they actually trained and instructed Benicio del Toro and Tommy Lee Jones.
So fun. I'm going to interject real quick. So one, I got someone I know who does SIOC that I'm trying to get on the podcast, just working on a date. But two, if anyone's read my biography, Ultra-OCR Man, I quote stuff from SIOC Tactical Group in the last chapter, because they came, we had like 6 instructors or so, including Thomas Kyer, come and do a tactical mindset thing for a bunch of special operations dude that lasted like a week. And they're the ones who introduced me to Kali in general, and then the whole mindset. And then they're the ones who introduced me to the Hunted, and they were like, yeah, we just got back from, I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was like a couple of years. It was still relatively close in time. Like we helped with we were on set for the Hunted, and if you watch the special features on the Hunted DVD, you can see some of them in the background of the special features. Okay.
Oh man, that is awesome, man. That is really awesome. Yeah, I really hope that you're able to be able to speak to have that interview with the SIOC guy, because that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I really like a lot of their mindset stuff, and they're the ones who initially drew me into Kali to start training some of it. So even though I don't specifically train with them, besides that 1 week seminar, I picked up their DVDs and stuff, because there's not a SIOC person that lives locally. But yeah, I'll cross paths with them again at some point in the future.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Another movie that I would suggest, because again, Kali is something that when you know what to look for, you can see it. So I mentioned earlier the Born Identity series. So if you look at especially the first Born Identity, when Jason Bourne is attacked by the guy in the office, and Jason actually takes out a pen and uses it like a knife, that's what we do in Kali. We could take any object that as a weapon of opportunity in order to defend ourselves. So whether it be a knife, a pen, even what we call dulo, basically a little stick, cylindrical stick, we could use any of those things to defend ourselves. So that's a great showcase of Kali, where again, you don't really see it. For most viewers, you just go, man, that's really badass that he took a pen and stabbed this guy 1,000 times. But with Kali, that's what we do. We actually use that to attack. The principle for Kali practitioners is to defang the snake, meaning we destroy the weapon hand. And once you take that away, then you can actually go in for the kill or neutralize the threat. So Jason Bourne definitely was something that opened up my eyes to the collie world and helped me to get reintroduced into my mother's culture.
Nice. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the reason I ended up having you on the podcast, well, one, I met you at a Tiga Tactics seminar or two Tiga Tactics seminars, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But also, you had shown up to the last one a couple weeks ago with a City Challenge shirt on because you had competed in and run the City Challenge race the day before, and I got really excited because it's not very often the world of my world of martial arts and my world of OCR like overlap in the Venn diagram. So I was
Mm-hmm.
excited that you're in that very small overlap percentage. So tell people a little bit about City Challenge race, and as an outsider, kind of like what you really what you liked about them, and yeah, I'll let you talk about City Challenge for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up in North Jersey, I grew up in the Bayonne, Jersey City area. So when I heard about the City Challenge race, I wanted to get involved in that because, for one, I've never ran a 5K before, and I've never run an OCR before. But I wanted to try because it just seems so fun to do, especially with all the obstacles that they have. And for the OCR crowd, you already know what that is, from the monkey bars, flipping tires, carrying sandbags and cinder blocks, and all the other things that the that the facilitators throw at you to really challenge you and really upset you. But I've been doing City Challenge race since 2015, and I did at least one or two races a year. But it was in 2019 I really went for it because in a City Challenge race, not only do you get a medal for every time you run the race, but if you participate in three of their races, you get what's called the Tri-City Medal. And I'll tell you, like, to challenge myself, to push myself, I said, you know what? No matter what, I'm gonna participate in this thing. I'm gonna make sure I set time for that Saturday, for those Saturdays. That way I can be a part of the City Challenge race and get my Tri-City medal. So in 2019, as I was working out, I also made sure to do my cardio and participating through races. And not only did I get the medals for each race, but I got my Tri-City medal. And I'll tell you, what's great about the City Challenge race is that it's in an urban environment, which makes it a lot easier because a lot of folks that live closer to major cities like Manhattan, Philly, and everywhere else, sometimes it's quite a hike to go out to where Tough Mudder or Spartan is held,
Yeah.
and to be able to participate in those races. But with the City Challenge race, you're in a major city, so you can grab a hotel room, run your 5K with the OCR in the OCR, and then afterwards walk a couple of blocks, grab some food to eat, then you're done. And not only that, and this is the beautiful part for me, is that running in the City Challenge race from Jersey City to Hoboken or even in Manhattan itself, just seeing the skyline. There's
Yeah.
nothing like it when you're running on the boardwalk and you're doing all the obstacles, and then you take that moment. Now, of course, if you're a speedster, run through it, do your thing. But if you're there to enjoy life and really enjoy the OCR and just taking a moment that you're actually kicking your own ass and torturing yourself with a 5K run and obstacles, take that moment to look at the skyline. Just really enjoy the fact that you're pushing yourself, you're enjoying life, you're doing something that you normally wouldn't do, and just soak it all in. And that's something I just enjoy the most about City Challenge race is that as I'm running through the race, just seeing that skyline and just seeing that beautiful, view while I'm, hopping over cop cars and climbing walls and stuff. It's just nothing like it.
Yeah, they're really a great series. I've only gotten to do one because they're primarily located in the Northeast, so I have to be
Mhm.
traveling back home to visit family or something to do one. But for our OCR listeners, they are, Justin T. Manning, the Startline MC from OCR World Championships, is typically the MC at their events. They've had obstacle builders, so Sidney Paul Morris and Race Ready Obstacles have helped construct some of their obstacles. So you get a lot of the OCR World Championship quality feel obstacles at them. So they're really good as far as type of obstacles, uniqueness of obstacles, and then the density of obstacles was like insane. I remember the one I did in New Jersey. Oh, it was in New York. I think I did a New York
Mhm.
one, and it was just like obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And the very last obstacle, the one I did was stadium steps with the
Mm.
double sandbag carry,
Oh God.
and
Yeah.
I was straight up dying. I crossed the finish line. My dad's like, he's like, "You look terrible." I was like, thank. This is my dad who goes to all like my 12 and 24-hour race, but I crossed the finish line of the 5, and he's like, you don't look very good. I was like, but it was good. Yeah. If I lived in the Northeast, I would do more of them. And their next one for any of our listeners that are interested in doing one, Saturday, July 29th in New Jersey, Hoboken.
Yeah. And Hoboken has a lot of great eateries. I mean, of course, Jersey City does too, but man, you remind me of Randall's Island, climb up and down the stadium steps with
Yeah,
two sandbags.
that's the
My
one. Yeah, that's the
God,
one.
my God, that was a true torture test because like it's not just physically torturing, but mentally, because mentally you're like, fuck, am I done? Excuse the language. But you're like, man, am I done? Am I done? You're like, no, I got a couple more laps. I got to go. And you could see where people are just giving up. You know, you talk about discipline and people that give up after a certain point. As you climb up and down those stadium steps, and you could see people that come in before you and then they leave because they couldn't complete the actual, required amount of laps. And you got that's the point where you got to push yourself and say, hey, I came here to finish this job. I'm going to finish it no matter what, no matter how long it takes. That that really, and in a way, it just proves to yourself that if you could do that, if you could actually grab two heavy ass sandbags, climb up and down those steps for, I don't know, 20 times or however many times you were supposed to do it and complete it, then anything else, any other challenge you have in life, you can accomplish those things too. I and for me, that's the link between martial arts and OCR is that if you can meet any challenge that's placed before you, then in just those two environments, then when it comes to life, no matter what life throws at you, you can accomplish those things. You just have to look at the problem in a different way, but you could find those solutions.
Absolutely. Also want to give a quick shout out to LV Guzman, who's the owner of, I believe he's still the owner of City Challenge Race. And if anyone who has come up to North American Championships or OCR World Championships and jumped over the uh, police car and taxi car, again, that is from the City Challenge Race. And it always comes out like you always get a good picture in my mind in that. Whether you go over it slow and kind of like flex at the top, or like the one I have from North American Championship, I'm like vaulting over one-handed, and
Mm-hmm.
it just looks awesome. So worth it for the picture, for the gram alone, definitely.
Oh yeah, definitely a money shot.
Yeah. All right. So I also mentioned I had met you at Tiga Tactics seminars, or two in Maryland. So tell people a little bit about the Tiga Tactics seminar and kind of what, in your opinion, makes a difference from like a normal martial arts seminar.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I love about Tiga Tactics is that the founders are Conrad Bowie and Patrick Vuong. I might be mispronouncing his last name,
I think you
but
got
with
it.
yeah, but with Patrick and Conrad, one thing that's great is that they take their collective experience in martial arts from Wing Chun, kickboxing, BJJ, Kali, Silat, Chinese martial arts, and everything else in between, and they boil it down to the fundamentals because it's not about having some badass martial artists, some top level practitioners being a part of the Tiga Tactics, group. We're really boiled down to the fundamentals. So that way anyone, even someone off the street, can actually learn these things to defend themselves. And I remember with at the first Tiga Tactics seminar where I met you the first time, we had some folks that are from Virginia. So they're used to concealed carrying, but they never trained with a knife before.
Hmm.
And I remember with that couple, the wife and husband, they both had some questions. And of course, the wife was a little bit more vocal about some of her concerns about carrying a knife, deploying a knife, and be able to fend off an attacker while deploying her knife. But I remember at the second day, so basically within a 6 to 8 hour period of time, she built up the level of competency to be able to deploy her blade and be able to do what needs to be done. And it was great because with Tiga Tactics, it really, again, focuses on the fundamentals because everyone loves seeing all the cool trick shots, the parlor tricks and all that. But you need the fundamentals in order to get there.
Yeah.
And that's something I appreciate about Tiga Tactics is that they're not trying to teach all these cool techniques, what you see on YouTube and Instagram where you have these quote unquote masters in a McDojo fashion, using a force field to drop all their opponents. It's like, hey, let's boil it down to, hey, use basic kickboxing to create distance, deploy your blade, then have that blade be your sword and shield between you and your opponent. And so very simple, but very fundamental stuff that you could take for your own. And once you practice that, you can really develop the skills that you need to build off of it.
Yeah, totally agree. Again, Conrad and Patrick, who I've both had on the podcast before, just incredibly knowledgeable. They've done so many different styles and achieved such a high level in so many different styles. I think if they didn't have that base, you could go to one of their seminars and be like, these guys are just teaching like real basic stuff. But that they're pulling from this enormous pool and they're like, this is what you need. And I think that is what's truly valuable is they've distilled it down to like just the bare necessities. And if I'm going to teach my wife or I'm going to teach if I only have a couple of days with someone, that's essentially what I'm going to teach them and not focus on all the, the dozens and dozens and hundreds of other moves that are out there. So, and I also feel like when I go, so I've been to a whole bunch of different seminars for martial artists and a lot of them are great, and sometimes you learn just like really cool stuff. But every time I leave a Tiga Tactics seminar, I feel like I'm better. I feel like I'm a better martial artist than when I walked in the door at the beginning. Versus sometimes I leave some of the other seminars and I learned a lot of like really cool stuff, but I don't think I can execute it in any way, shape, or form without several more days and hours of practice. Versus when I leave a Tiga Tactics seminar, I'm like, all right, I'm better right now than I was 48 hours ago, hands down.
Oh yeah.
It's not going to be sexy, but I'm going to be able to do the move in a pressured environment to execute the techniques that they taught. So.
Absolutely. And one thing I love about Tiga Tactics is that with their course offerings, it deals with all kinds of stuff that we would see on the street. Dealing with with an attacker with a baseball bat, or with their upcoming seminar, dealing with grappling, like someone actually knocked you down or tackled you to the ground. How you defend against an attacker? Because obviously, if you're being attacked, chances are likely two things: one, the attacker has a weapon, and two, he has friends. So if you got your back on the ground and you got someone on top of you just grounding and pounding and just punching you, how do you deal with that? And so looking forward to that with Tiga Tactics because, again, they're thinking about real world application and how to handle it in the most fundamental way so that way you could actually survive.
Yeah, good stuff. They're next. So for our listeners, they got a couple of webinars going on this year. I think this will come out after their next webinar, which is early June. But then they're live training. They have one in San Francisco, July 15th and 16th. They've got another webinar August 12th, just like you were saying, Tommy, about stand and fight. Mm-hmm. And then they've got, let's see what else they got. Wilderness Weekend, so a combination of wilderness survival, September 16th and 17th in I believe Northern Virginia area. So a combination of wilderness survival and also essential martial arts. And then I know Conrad's teaching some. If you like the fancy and sexy stuff, I know he's got a Penjak Salat seminar in October in Maryland also. So you guys can check that out. And TigaTactics.com is the website, or if you want to sign up for any of their online training, which can be done literally at your own time and pace. It is, if you head to my Instagram, ultra-ocr man, I've got a link in there, and I've also got a discount code for 50% off. So anyone who's looking to sign up, you can head over and use my discount code and click through my links, please, and that would be helpful. And yeah, you can check them out. Any other final thoughts for Tiga before we start closing it up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say this as a plugin for Tiga Tactics. One of the things that I can really appreciate, and this goes back to the cross training, but I remember at the first Penjak Silat seminar I attended with Conrad, is that Conrad in his portion of, or during his session, he would teach Chinese martial arts like Bagua, basically Chinese boxing. And so he would teach all the different forms, and everyone's kind of looking at each other like, okay, why are we walking around in a circle, doing all the movements from like, dragon, dragon head, whatever the moves were called. But then the cool part, the fun part, is when Danny Presatia, who is a Sealot guy, his system is called Inti Ambak Penjok Sealot, which basically means inner wave Penjok Sealot. But Danny would take the Chinese martial arts that Conrad just taught, then apply it to Sealot. So now you're getting two fundamentally different martial arts systems. And like you said, when it comes to martial arts and OCR, there's a lot of principles that actually in fundamentals that start to merge. And so with Danny, he would actually merge the two and say, all right, everything that Conrad did, we're going to do, but we're going to do it with the Sealot. And then we would actually use a Sealot application to what Conrad just taught. And I remember Danny, he's a jokester. As everyone's struggling, Danny would turn to the whole group and go, "Hey guys, you just trained in this for a whole hour. We're just doing it a little differently. What's wrong?" But it was fun because it was just like really, challenging ourselves mentally to take what was taught before, and instead of there being like a gap or division, but actually link the two to make it our own. It was just phenomenal. So definitely, if any of the Tiga Tactics seminars or any of the C-Lot seminars that Conrad does, definitely attend those.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really drew me to them is I see the same concept I've used for obstacle course racing, strength and speed is the same thing I see them doing with martial arts, right? Where they try out all these different styles, and then they're pulling lessons and techniques from all these different styles and applying them into a single product. Just like essentially that's what I've been doing with obstacle course racing, right? Like obstacle course racing is only about a decade old, so the sport's still relatively new, but in physical fitness and improving and, getting better at grip strength and getting better cardio and being more versatile, like going from, we call it compromised running, where you go from like obstacles back to running, all that stuff is kind of old. So if I can just steal lessons from all these other sports, I can essentially build a obstacle course racing athlete capable of doing very impressive stuff. And I see the same concept being worked at Tiga Tactics.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's actually start closing it up now. Before we get going, we like to ask our listeners, tell us something people would be surprised to know about you.
Okay, so I'm a big nerd. So on top of martial arts and OCR, I actually play Magic the Gathering. So,
nice.
Yeah.
I never got into Magic. I played I think twice in my life. But not surprisingly, I have friends who do that. So you are in good company. You're in good company.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Also music. I mean, of course, everyone loves music, but for me, I love attending concerts. So I particularly like metal and rock. So I actually go attend a lot of concerts, but again, building relationships. So I actually have a lot of friends that are musicians and, just like to talk about music and incorporate music into martial arts.
Gotcha. So give me a couple of your favorite bands here.
Okay, so some of the well-known names, I love Gojira, Rammstein,
Okay,
Behemoth, Deftones.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. I've seen Rammstein in concert, I think twice.
No way, really?
Yeah. Have you seen them in concert? Have you seen them in concert?
Oh yeah, I've seen them twice. So
Okay.
I saw them in 2017 and also last year.
Oh wow. I'm gonna date myself real quick. Let's see. I saw them in 1999, the Family Values Tour.
Oh God, yeah, that was a ride. I remember, I really wanted to go to that when I was a teenager and I first listened to Rammstein, but yeah, when they got arrested, it was like, okay.
And then, let's see, during that concert, I was crowd surfing. They dropped me. I hit the ground and basically blacked out for a couple of seconds. And then someone picked me up and they were holding me up and I was like, I don't know what happened. So that was an interesting experience. And then I saw them again where they headlined. Soulfly opened for them in New York City. Again, that was probably early 2000s. I'm going to go with 2002. And they are, if anyone's likes Rammstein a little bit, you got to go see them in concert because they literally, I don't know, do they still burn everything? Everything was pyrotechnics.
Oh, yes. When I saw him in Philly last year, the whole sky above the stadium was just covered in black smoke from all the pyrotechnics.
It's so good. It like if they didn't even play music, it would still be worth going to watch because that's how much stuff they get set on fire. It's awesome. I mean, drumsticks. They got a cage that's on fire. There's like when they opened the show, they had the curtain up and like a fuse went up both sides of the curtain and
Hmm.
there's an explosion and then the curtain just fell and they were there with like the lights on and music playing. It was a pretty awesome start.
Oh yeah, it was. I remember there was this band called Three Teeth, which I love those guys. But with Three Teeth, during an interview, they mentioned that during the whole tour, when they opened up for Rammstein, they actually had to mark an X on the only spots where they could actually stand because they were
Mm,
so afraid to trigger off the fireworks that they had to literally just stand on the X and not move anywhere else.
I'm not
It was great.
surprised.
Yeah.
Um, and they took like an hour between opening band and Rammstein because they have to like recheck all the pyrotechnics or set everything up or something because it's a long break whenever Rammstein comes on. And then I'm gonna keep it PG. Do they still let's see, how do I say this PG? You know what I'm about to ask? Does he still expose himself? It's not real, but
Yeah. So
okay.
he modified it because, I mentioned a few minutes ago about Family Values. So Family Values, that was a great lineup of all the bands from Limp Bizkit to Rammstein and everyone else. But they got arrested because of that prop. So,
Ah, okay, yeah.
yeah,
He's
they
got a
got arrested.
fake. He's got a fake. He exposed himself. It's fake. It's not his
Yeah, it's
actual.
fake.
But he
Yeah,
he pulls it out and it sprays water into the crowd.
yeah.
Um.
So he doesn't do that now. Maybe in
Oh.
some other countries he does. But what he did was he actually turned it into a cannon. So a big ass cannon that's actually shooting out confetti into the crowd.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would shoot water and people would like push to the front to try to get sprayed. It was very, very bizarre. Um.
Yeah,
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Great. Great. They put on a great show. Side note,
they
my
do.
two. The two bands I've seen the most in concert, my two favorites, again, dating myself, I don't update my music selection very often. Rise Against and Bad Religion,
Oh,
which
cool.
which I really enjoy, but at the same time, it's funny because they are basically the they basically the things they stand for is like almost the complete opposite of like who I am as a person.
Yeah.
Like being like very anti, you know, as a military member and a Christian, like this, those two, they're stand on the complete opposite side of the spectrum of me. I just think it's funny, but their music's really good. So
No, it really is. It really is. I remember seeing Rise Against open for Deftones a couple years ago, and man, what a great show! Just the energy, the passion that they have in their music, and especially in their live performance, just nothing like it.
yeah, good stuff. All right, now we're actually gonna wrap it up. Any final shout outs you want to give, friends, family, sponsors, or social media plugs where people can follow you, etc., your training group, whatever.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to our training group, Combat Kali Sea Lot. So we actually have two chapters, one in Jersey, one in Maryland. I want to shout out to Duran Howard, Tony McGregor, and also LT, Lieutenant Eric. But also just want to shout out to Conrad Bowie and guys like him and even yourself, just being open-minded and just having an openness to train, to learn as much as possible and not be limited to one particular skill set or system. So just want to shout out to all those folks and just want to say appreciate you all. And
Right on.
yeah, and Evan, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming on. And then for our listeners, you can head over to teamstrengthspeed.com or ultra-ocrman.com. Both take you to the same website. There are links all over it for the 24-minute documentary that's professionally produced by Bobby Ross. Covers some of the ultra endurance events I've done and kind of dives into the psyche of ultra endurance sports. You guys can check that out. It's a $10 purchase. It allows you to digital download or stream. And then for any of you guys listening that like kind of this picking of lessons from different sports and stuff like that and are interested in endurance, my latest book is called On Endurance. It's available off Amazon digital or hard copy, or you can buy a hard copy off my website. And again, that takes lessons learned from specific ones that I pulled from the podcast. So I pulled from like over 200 episodes and pulled a bunch of lessons and threw it into this book, kind of giving you like a step-by-step guide on how to improve endurance, includes like mental tips. And it's not just for obstacle course racing, it's for any sport. That book specifically has 2 quotes in there from Patrick. So wants to read some quotes from him. And then if you like some of the, say, more of a combative side of things, my biography, Ultra-OCR Man, covers some of my professional background as a special forces soldier, and then some of the ultra endurance charity events. You could call the book a prequel to the documentary, or you could call the documentary a sequel to the book. They cover some of the same stuff, but the actual film footage covers stuff that is not in the book, and the book covers stuff that is not in the film footage. So you guys can check that out, and that book's available hard copy, digital, and audiobook. Audiobook is off of Audible, so through your Amazon account. And finally, Blegmitz, the best-selling obstacle course race mitten, is available off our website. We are the only distributors in the U.S. Make sure you pick up a copy or a pair, rather, for anyone doing toughest or any endurance stuff, or planning on doing cold weather training. All right, Tommy, thanks again for coming on. Good talking to you. Appreciate your time, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too, man. Thank you. I appreciate you too, man.
I'll catch you later.
All right, talk to you later.